I'm Ben from AutoGreat Consultants, and today we're going to be talking about how to connect your Supabase database to Noloco on the front end. So Noloco is a great way to access data for internal use cases. It's not really built to be a consumer-facing application. And Cerebral is a team that we work with. They do recruiting technology. So everything from job applications to managing your candidates through an ATS. And we work with them on their consumer-facing application, but also on the back end, they had a question that they came to us. They said that they needed to manage internal use cases, so such as support, and they also have a lot of content on the site. They do courses as well. And with those courses, they have moderators, or they're thinking about having moderators down the road. So these internal and some external roles where people need to access the data, but it's different than their typical permission system. And because they needed almost a dual system to manage logins and permissions and who can access the data, they came to us and were asking about the best way to approach that. And I recommended Noloco for their internal use cases. So for support, any customer-facing positions, for those moderators. And the main reason for that is it separates the logic out. Because often for your internal use cases, you're going to have workflows, you're going to have things that you need to do that really is just very different than what a consumer would do when accessing your data. And, most businesses that aren't tech focused, Noloco is sufficient. There might be a small portal or like different forms that you can send out, and Noloco is great for that. However, for the tech companies that do have some sort of consumer facing application, whether that be a mobile application or a web app, Noloco is still a great tool for internal use cases. So what we'll be talking about today is how to make that connection. And it's really seamless in terms of having one database for all of your data, but two different methods to access it. If you have a consumer-facing application, Noloco, you can build all of the permissions and the interfaces that you need to manage internal use cases. So first step with this is you'll want to be on the business plan on Noloco. That's what gets us access to Postgres and Supabase, and it tends to make sense. If you have a Postgres or a Supabase database, you're typically going to have more data in there anyway. Oftentimes you might be going even into the enterprise, but there's flexibility in that as well. So you're getting to the point where Google Sheets or Airtable, they're not able to scale with the amount that you need. And that was the case with Cerebral. First step that you'll do after you're on the business plan is if you come to data, we'll go ahead and connect a Supabase database to this. And so we'll go ahead and click next. And then from here, we'll be able to access all of the data that we need in the Supabase interface. If you come to your Supabase interface and you click on your project, the button that you'll come to first is this connect button. And this will have everything that you need to get started. So there's some information about your Postgres database here and different parameters. And first step that we're going to do is change this to the P-SQL. Once we change it to P-SQL, we'll have all of the data points that we need except for the password. So that's something, if you haven't set it up, go ahead and change that password. You may need to talk to your IT team in order to get that set up. But once you change it to P-SQL, it should just be plug and play with all of the data points from there. All right, once you have everything connected, then it should pull everything in from Supabase. And it'll say Supabase database, and it'll show a little Postgres icon. And that's because Postgres at its core, or Supabase uses Postgres under the hood. And then you'll see all of your table names, and you can then take the data and use it as you would in Noloco. One thing that I will mention is when you're making changes to the database structure, so this is our database in Supabase, make sure that you're making the updates in Supabase first and that you pull those updates into Noloco. So because Supabase can be a centralized database for multiple applications, and especially if you're using it for another application, say with your engineering team, if you're making edits to the database, there's probably a process that you'll want to go through anyway with your engineering team for those updates. But if you're making updates in Noloco, it doesn't necessarily reflect in Supabase. That's actually a nice feature because occasionally there's things that you want to do in Noloco that shouldn't necessarily be in the database. So it could be, if you're doing an internal use case, it could be a check that you've completed a step or a part of a workflow. And that's not something that you necessarily need to keep in Supabase because it's not going to affect the customer facing or the data that the rest of the team uses. So it's actually nice to separate that out where it allows you to move quickly and nimbly without having to go to the engineering team to ask for updates every time. So that's the overview of how to get the tables set up. If you do have questions, please reach out to us. Happy to help over a free introductory call.